Hi everyone, I'm Allie with Potomac Beads. Join me in making this nice patriotic Dutch spiral in these great flag colors. If you need any of the materials, remember they are below me in the description to get from PotomacBeads.com as well as PotomacBeads.eu. So to start out the design, we are basing this on a Dutch spiral. I know, kind of ironic since we are doing an American flag with a Dutch spiral. But if you're unfamiliar with the Dutch spiral, it's basically peyote stitch in a tubular peyote where we increase and decrease one of the lines of the stitch. Now it had a lot of progressions that happened during one of our live Twitch events that we were recording and having fun kind of creating on the fly during one of those live streams. It went from, you can see the different variation here, from the dark blue to a bigger blue to a lighter blue, and finally settled on this one that I think looks a ton like that stars and stripes. So I'm going to show you how we get started with that nice flag design that when you hold it vertically it actually looks kind of like a waving flag. Again, we are using the Dutch spiral, and I have a series of beads here lined up on my bead map. I have 8O seed beads, and those are in the silver lined Cobalt. These are all Miyuki brand. I have 15 O's in the Galvanized Gold. I have matte white 11 O's. I have matte Cobalt, semi-frosted transparent Cobalt in the 11. I have a galvanized Duracoat gold 11, and I have the silver lined ruby in 11 as well. The white and the red are going to alternate in their place in the Dutch spiral, which is going to give us these rows of lines. When you start out a tubular peyote stitch, you're going to begin with what is actually 2 rows at once. We're going to begin by doubling most of the quantities of the beads, and then we'll go in and start the progression. If you struggle with peyote stitch, you may want to watch the tubular peyote video prior to doing the Dutch spiral. In addition, you may want to write down the actual steps that are involved in this video for the pattern. Once you get going, it's really easy to follow. The other thing that you can do as well is to get a straw to actually build and work around if you want to have a straw going through the center to make it easier to hold on and to remember your position. So to begin, I have on a size 10 needle some .006 white wildfire thread. You could also use blue or red because you do see the thread just a tiny little bit in this tubular stitch. I have on here an 8O seed bead that is not part of my project that is going to come off working as a stop bead. On the actual portion of the thread, you want to put one of your 8O in that silver lined, a 15O gold followed by 2 11Os, and these are in the white color. This series here of the 8 and then the gold and then your multiples of your white or your red are always going to be grouped together as we increase in the count and decrease in the count around in that spiral. Then you have on 2 of the Cobalt 11s and 2 of the gold 11s. With your thread and needle, go back through the first 8O seed bead, that silver lined Cobalt, so your needle is exiting away from that stop bead. Coming out through the 8O seed bead, we're going to add another 8O and another 15O. That is always going to remain the same. Because I have 2 whites there, I'm going to increase my count by adding 3 reds. Take your needle and thread and sew through the first of the blue beads. Coming out of the blue, I want you to add a blue, and we're going to sew into the first gold bead. Coming out of the gold bead, you're going to add another gold. From here, we're going to spiral and step up through that 8O seed bead that we just added prior to the red beads. That is our second row. The third row here, add another 8O followed by the 15, because again, those always accompany one another. And we added 3 of our reds previously. That followed 2 whites. We're now going to add 4 white. We're going to go up to a count of 5 and then back down to a count of 2. So I have 2 white, 3 red, now 4 white to get my nice little kind of flag stripes in there. And I'm sewing through that blue that sits towards the top that I just added in that third row. Coming out of the blue, add a blue and go through that last gold that you added in the previous row. Coming out of the gold, add a gold and step up through that first 8O blue seed bead that you just added. At this point here, when you pull, you should start to see a nice cylindrical or spiral shape. If you need to, you can insert a stirring straw or a straw through here, a knitting needle, anything in that tubular form that will kind of hold it in place. I prefer not to have anything in there. I like to work just freeform in my hand. From here, an 8/0 seed bead goes on and the 15/0, and then my count is my 4 white, so I'm going to increase to 5 red. Now you can make this as fluffy as you want to by adding more beads. 5 is going to be my largest count that I add. From here, you're going to go through that last blue 11/0 that you added in the previous row. Add a blue because you're coming out the blue, and go through the gold that you added in the last row. Coming out the gold, add a gold, and then step up again through that first blue 8/0 seed bead that you just put on in that same row. From here, coming off the 8/0, go ahead and add another 8/0 and a 15. And now I'm going to add 4 white. Again, my count is always going to be 5 is the highest, which is always going to be the red color, and then I'm decreasing. I'm going to continue to decrease and increase the amount that I add along basically my stripe rows, switching from white to red. After that, you're adding a blue, and you can see I'm spiraling this around and kind of turning it in my hand, which is going to allow me to continue the stitch and not awkwardly sewing away from me. Add a gold because you're coming out the gold and through the 8/0 from that row. After you do this little step up, give a little tug on the piece. You can see that nice rowing and spining starting to happen. Again, 8, 15, and now because I have my 4 whites, I'm going to add 3 reds because I'm on the decrease. Go through the last 11/0 blue that was added, making sure this row is above the previous one. Add a blue because I'm going through the, coming out the blue, sew through the gold, add a gold as you come out the gold, and sew through your last blue that you just added in that same row. Again, that starts that nice spiral, and now our count is down to 2. We're going to add an 8, a 15. We have 3 reds previously, so we're going to add 2 white. Go through then the blue that you added in the last row in the 11, making sure again that this stripe goes on top of the previous stripe. Coming out the blue, add a blue, sew through the previous gold. Coming out the gold, add a gold, and sew through the 8/0 that you just added in that row. Coming out that 8/0, that finishes this white row of 2 beads, and now I start to increase again. So you're going to add your 1 8 and your 15, and then add 3 of your red beads and continue on. So you can see here that how this is starting to progress, that you're going up and down in the count to get that nice spiral. Because we're not sewing through 2 8/0s at a time, we're also getting a spiral of this Cellini design. If you want to keep it a little bit straighter and do this tubular peyote, you can go through 2 of your 8/0s, and that'll keep it a little bit more straight. I like that curved look, and I think it looks really nice, going almost like a ribbon effect, and when you hold it to the side, it actually looks like a waving flag. Continue on joining and adding in more and more rows, and then I'll show you how we get it together, whether or not you want to make it a bangle or put ends for a necklace or a bracelet design. Once you get your piece as long as you need it to be, and whether or not you want it to be a bangle, you can sew it together. You can put a little bead in the middle, like I'm going to take one of these stars here and put that in the middle of my design. You can use bead caps, or you can even run just a wire or a cord down the middle so you make it into a center for a necklace. Depending on which technique you want to do, you can look at some of the other tubular videos that we have to show you exactly. What I'm going to be doing is, again, adding that star bead to the middle. I have both ends ending at the same spot. So I have 2 beads of the white on each side. If I wanted to end and sew them together, what I would do is basically use them as a peyote stitch, sewing the 2 seamlessly together, leaving off this last row of white, since I would begin with a row of white on the other side. And just go in from one side to the other. Instead of adding a blue here, I'd get ready and sew on the blue that's on the other side, seaming the 2. With my thread end that has the needle on to add the star, I'm going to basically downgrade. So I have here on the design the idea that I have 1 or 2 of the white beads. I haven't done a 1 count at all, but I'm going to do that to close up this tubular shape. So I'm going to add my last of my design, which is going to be my 8, my 15, and then 1 of my red beads. Go ahead and sew into the blue just like if you would be progressing, and that's going to help to kind of close this design up. From here, again, add your blue, sew through the gold, add the gold, sew through the blue, and make that your ending piece. You can see that really kind of closed up the end there. I'm going to sew on my star, and my star has a pretty big hole, so I'm actually going to add a blue 11, add the star, and then going over to the other side, add a blue 11, and then I'm going to get ready to seam together over here on the other side. So you want to kind of lay this out straight, come over to the other side, and again I have that white bead here. I'm going to sew out of that 8/0 seed bead like I'm getting ready to add to the design. I'm going to add the blue 8, gold 15, 1 of my reds, and then sew through that single blue on the other side. Again, closing up the design and helping to link the two together. I moved that stop bead or the starter bead kind of out of the way. Spinning it in my hand, I'll add an 11/0, sew through the gold bead, and that was a blue 11 that I added. Add a gold 11 and sew through that blue bead that I just added to close up the seam. You can see the star kind of hangs out in the middle there, right at the connector. What I'm going to do then is reinforce that last little loop that I did, going back through the 15, the 11, the gold, and then when I'm coming out the gold, I'm going to grab onto that same 11/0 seed bead that my thread is coming out of from the star, go through the star and out the 11/0 seed bead. I'm going to leave the tail here because I'm going to come back to the other side and tie it off. When I get to the other side, I'm going to go into that gold bead just to kind of center that up. Pull nice and tight so that comes to the middle. So back through those last couple beads in the row, going through the 11, the 15s, through the blue 8/0, and then through the gold bead as well. Coming out the gold bead, then I'm going to go back in through the 11/0 seed bead before the star, out to the other side, pulling that nice and tight to get that in, and then take these 2 thread ends and tie them together. Right over left, left over right. So it's basically like thinking about tying on or doing a button and adding a button to a pair of pants or something like that, where you're basically sewing from one side to the other and securing the rope along the side. That gives that nice little kind of star addition in the middle, which you can again keep on or keep off, it's kind of up to you, sewing the two either right to one another, adding caps and a clasp, or running a cord right through the middle of this design. So once you burn off the ends of the thread, you can roll your bangle onto the design, and that Cellini will stretch a fair amount to go over the knuckles and have the design completed. Remember, if you want to, you can change that up and kind of put cord in the middle, add some cord or some caps, and really have fun. Thanks so much for watching this Dutch spiral Uncle Sam bracelet. Remember, if you're doing it as a bangle or as a necklace, you can have fun changing up and actually making your own design by changing that introductory pattern. Remember, you can join us on Facebook and YouTube as well as on Twitch to join in this designing and creation process. You can also give a little thumbs up, leave a comment below, say how you're going to change up the stitch or what you did as your pattern, as well as subscribe to this YouTube channel to get regular updates from us. As always, if you need any of the materials, you can check out below me in the description for all the links to shop with us online at PotomacBeads.com as well as PotomacBeads.eu. Thanks so much for watching and enjoy your own patriotic spiral.